From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're in New York.
In the 60s and the 70s, people stood up for wars and for massive atrocities happening in various corners of the world right now. With the age of the internet, with social networks, with journalists who help, we can stand up for the fate of 3 women who were thrown in prison by a ruthless president.
As 3 members of the Russian band Pussy Riot remain locked up, supporters of the group traveled to New York to receive this year's Lenin Ono Peace Prize awarded by Yoko Ono. We'll speak with the husband of jailed member Nadia, then Eve Ensler.
On February 14, 2013, we are calling 1 billion women and all the men and people who love them to walk out of their jobs, to walk out of their homes, to walk out of their schools, to walk out and strike, and to find your group, find your posse, find your friends, find your stadium, and dance until the violence stops. Because we are over it.
1 Billion Rising. The playwright and activist Eve Ensler launches a global strike to end violence against women. Then as Arizona's anti-immigrant Show Me Your Papers law goes into effect, Jeff Biggers joins us, author of State Out of the Union, Arizona and the Final Showdown Over the American Dream. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Anti-U.S. government protests continue in Muslim countries, angered over a U.S.-made amateur film mocking the Prophet Muhammad. In Pakistan, at least 21 people were killed and more than 200 wounded Friday when thousands took part in nationwide rallies that turned violent. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton appealed for calm inside Pakistan.
I want to thank the government of Pakistan for their efforts to protect our embassy in Islamabad and consulates in Lahore, Peshawar, and Karachi. And I want to be clear, as I have said on numerous occasions, the violence we have seen cannot be tolerated. There is no justification for violence. Of course, there is provocation, and we have certainly made clear that we do not in any way support provocation.
More protests were held over the weekend in countries including Iran, Greece, and Bangladesh. The New York Times reports the deadly attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, during protests there against the film has seriously hampered CIA operations on the ground. Following the deaths of U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 of his staff, more than a dozen CIA operatives and contractors were evacuated. They've been gathering intelligence on armed groups operating in and around Benghazi. The Libyan government has said it only became aware of the U.S. intelligence operations after seeing the number of operatives being evacuated. The Obama administration has released the names of 55 Guantanamo prisoners who've been cleared for release. The names are part of a group of 86 prisoners who received approval to be transferred from Guantanamo 3 years ago, but have remained in captivity. Guantanamo defense attorneys say the disclosure will make it easier to advocate for those identified, but have urged the U.S. to reveal the remaining names and begin transfers without further delay. Republican candidate Mitt Romney's released a limited set of personal tax records following months of public criticism. Romney's 2011 tax return shows he paid an effective tax rate of 14% on gross income of $13.7 million. But the return also shows Romney gave $1.75 million in charitable deductions so as not to contradict his claim he's never paid below 13%. Keeping the deductions would have meant a tax rate of 10%. But foregoing them also contradicts his previous statement. He wouldn't be qualified to be president had he ever paid more taxes than he owed. Although Romney continued his refusal to release full tax returns from previous years, a letter from his accountants say he paid a tax rate from 1990 through 2009 of at least 13.6%. Speaking on Fox News, former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs criticized Romney's secrecy on his tax returns.
He gave his accountant 20 years, and he gave the American people 2. Chris, what's he hiding? Why does he have corporations in Bermuda, investments in the Caymans? Why is somebody who says they're going to get tough on China investing in the Chinese state oil company and banks in China? I think the American people deserve to know a lot more about Mitt Romney's finances, because he hasn't been straight with the American people about those finances, and he hasn't been straight with the American people about what's going to happen with their taxes.
Campaigning over the weekend in Virginia, President Obama told supporters the change he's pledged in Washington will only come with the mobilization of ordinary Americans.
You can't change Washington just from the inside. You change it from the outside. You change it because people are mobilized. You change it with the help of ordinary Americans who are willing to make their voices heard, because the decency and the goodness and the common sense of Americans. We don't want an inside job in Washington. We want change in Washington. And from the day we began this campaign, we've always said that change takes more than one term or even one president, and it certainly takes more than one party. It can't happen if you write off half the nation before you even took office.
A prominent human rights lawyer known for defending peasants in Honduras has been assassinated. Antonio Trejo was attending a wedding when he was shot to death just outside the church. Trejo represented several peasants' rights groups in their struggle against wealthy Honduran landowners. Hours before his death, he'd spoken out publicly as part of his vocal opposition to plans for privately run cities in Honduras with their own police and tax system. The government of Ecuador has offered a new proposal to the British government in their standoff over Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Assange is currently taking refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London in a bid to avoid extradition to Sweden to answer questions over alleged sex crimes. Ecuador says it has asked Britain whether Assange could be sent to Sweden under its protection, which would thereby protect him from the threat of further extradition to the United States. A former Guatemalan army commander accused in a 1982 massacre has been extradited from Canada to the United States to face charges he lied about his past to obtain U.S. citizenship. Jorge Sosa was allegedly a commanding officer during the notorious Dos Eres killings, when a U.S.-backed death squad killed more than 200 villagers, including women and children, who were strangled, beaten with sledgehammers, and thrown down a well. If convicted, Sosa could be returned to Guatemala to face charges thereafter serving his sentence. Rioting has broken out at the notorious Foxconn factory in China, known for the poor treatment of workers who help make Apple products such as the iPhone. Foxconn says a personal dispute among the workers led to clashes involving some 2,000 of them, leaving 40 people injured. And the federal government's opened a criminal probe of Chevron's oil refinery in Richmond, California, after discovering the company funneled pollutants away from monitoring equipment and instead burned them off into the sky. The discovery came at the same plant where a massive fire sparked blazing fires and a health scare for surrounding residents last month. The alleged rerouting of the pollutants meant federal monitors have had no way of knowing how much pollution was emitted into the air and towards residents living downwind from the plant. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're on our 100-city tour back in New York City. On Wednesday, I'll be speaking at the University of Connecticut.